Today I'm going to run you through how to set up repricing software with Repriceit. This is a highly requested video, and I get it because when I first started, it was kind of confusing setting up the software on Repriceit.com. So I'm going to run you through how to set up your schedules. I'll also run you through how to set the parameters very quickly. I'm not going to drag this out to like 45 minutes or like an hour. I'm literally going to show you all my setup, how I set up the schedule, how you can do it too, the quickest, because I don't want to waste your time. So like I said, this is highly requested, right? But before we get into any of that, I also want to talk a little bit about the one that's in Seller Central. I also want to talk a little bit about why you want to use repricing software, right? So for those of you that don't know, there is actually a free one in Seller Central. So if you go to pricing, automate pricing, you can set up the repricing software 100% free in Seller Central, although there are some specific limitations with that. It takes if you have like any amount of SKUs that are probably like above 100, I would say, good luck setting that up because it's going to take you a long time to set the minimum and maximum price manually through every single one and then set up all the SKUs in there. In my opinion, it's just not worth it to use that. But if you are looking, to keep your costs as low as possible, then you can invest an hour or so into setting that up yourself, although I don't recommend using it. I've tried before. It's difficult, it's buggy, and I don't really like it. Now, I use Repriceit, but there are other ones out there. I've talked about Be Cool before, and there are probably like 4 or 5 other ones that come to mind. I just use this one because it's familiar to me. It's the one that I've always used, and it's in my opinion, it's honestly probably one of the best. Now, I have heard some other people say that they like other ones better, but this one, I'm just familiar, like I said. I've been using it for a while, and I know that it works. Also, you can get a free 30-day trial. I don't have an affiliate link for it. I'm not going to drop a link in the description on this one, but you can just go to repriceit.com, sign up, and then you'll get free 30 days to test it out. And then you'll obviously find out that it does work well, and you'll probably want to keep it. So I believe if you have under 500 SKUs, I think it's $9.99 for the tier that I'm at, whether it's like 500 SKUs to like 2,000 SKUs. I think it's $15.99 or $16.99. I honestly don't remember what I pay for it a month, but it's $15 or $16.99, so it's still super cheap. It's going to save you a lot of time, and it's going to make you a lot of money too, because it's going to make sure that your prices are either, depending on which way you set it up, and I'll show you here that I use it 2 different ways, one for my books and one for my new products, okay? So basically the main ways that you're going to use it is you're going to match the lowest price always, or you're going to match the buy box price. Now, I only do this for the things that I fulfill by me, so my merchant fulfill, but for the ones that are in the FBA for me specifically, and you can also set this up through FBA, I'll show you how to do it. I like to kind of just manage them myself because sometimes I do like to undercut the buy box and other times I like to match it. So depending on whether or not that's like a brand new book that I'm shipping in, or depending on whether that or not that's a private label product that I have, or depending on like an online arbitrage private label product through a coupon site, right? Or if it's like something else entirely, it depends on what I want to do with it. So I like to manage those, and I usually only have about 20 to 50 SKUs, like different types of items in FBA at any given time. So it's not that difficult to manage my FBA inventory. I literally just go into Seller Central, manage FBA inventory, not my inventory. And because these are only set up to manage the fulfilled by merchant, as you see here with the template names, it doesn't affect any of my FBA inventory, and I just manage that myself, okay? So that's how I do it, but you can set it up a number of different ways. Once you understand how to set it up, like I'm going to show you here, you can really get creative with this a number of different ways. I've seen people have literally 30 different templates. Obviously, I only have 2. They have 30 different templates, and all 30 different templates are going off at any given time during the day. It's a little bit much in my opinion, but hey, if it works for you, you can get creative and you can do it. Now, the first thing that you're going to need to do once you sign up is you're going to need to get started. Now, without me wasting your time and explaining to you how to go in and set up third-party apps to give them your basically your account ID and to give them your key to actually access your seller account, it literally describes how to do this for you here. So what you want to do on the dashboard home is you want to go to Getting Started Guide, and that's going to run you through literally all the click patterns that you need to do in Seller Central to get your account key, get your account ID, and then you just want to give that to Repriceit in your account settings, and boom, they're in. They sign up through your account so that they can access all your inventory, and that's how they reprice it with their software, okay? Very simple to do, but it's all right here in the Getting Started Guide, so I'm not going to cover that in this because I'm not going to insult your intelligence, and I also don't want to waste your time. The main 2 things that were difficult for me and confusing to me, and I'm sure it's the same for you, when getting started with Repriceit was the repricing settings and the repricing schedule, okay? So as you'll see here, I have my schedule going off every 2 hours. Now, I had this going off every hour because you'll see once you set this up, they do give you, so if I were to create a new schedule right here, they do give you a warning, so 15 minutes for smaller sellers and up to an hour for larger sellers. Because I have currently about 500, I think it's like 530 SKUs in my inventory, and there's probably about 1,000 to 1,500 books behind the computer that you literally can't see right now. I'm trying to get ungated for like top brands like Nike and Adidas and Puma and stuff like that. So because of that, I need to sell a lot of books so that I can get ungated. So, you know, little bit beyond the scope of this video, but that's the reason I've been selling a lot of books lately. So because I have so many SKUs, I do need to I deleted every other hour so that it's going off every 2 hours, because as you see, once I get close to 2,000 SKUs, it might take up to an hour or slightly more, so I don't want to reprice it every single hour, okay? So that's why you see in my repricing schedule, it's going off literally every other hour. So 1 a.m., 3 a.m., 5 a.m., 7 a.m., and so on and so forth, okay? So once you set it up, you're gonna come down here to create a new schedule. You can also turn on all your schedules. You can also turn off all your schedules. You'll see currently they're active. And you can also go in and edit them and manually turn each individual one off if you ever wanna do it, or delete it, okay? So basically you can set it up daily. You can set it up on certain days. Most of you are probably going to want to set it up daily, right? And then you're going to want to add different times in there, and you can literally add times every 15 minutes if you want, or you can add times every 30 minutes or every hour or every other hour like I do, or every 6 hours, whatever you want to do. Just keep in mind that you do need to allow the time. Literally, if I read this to you, be sure to allow enough time between schedules for your repricing event to complete. Otherwise, your schedule will not be executed. So if you feel like you have a decent amount of SKUs, give it a little bit more time. Don't do it every hour, maybe like every hour and a half, okay? And if you're repricing every hour and a half, your sales will rise, because if you're doing it manually, I guarantee you, not guarantee you have to sleep, so that's like 8 hours right there. And I guarantee you're not doing it every other hour on the dot. So this is really going to increase your sales and save you a lot of different time when you set it up. So daily, then you just put the time in. So if I wanted it to be like 3 p.m., okay, 3 p.m., boom, all templates or just a certain template. So this is something crucial too. If you want it to be active right away, then you're going to check this button and you're going to hit add schedule. If you don't, and you just want to test it out, and without getting too in depth with it, you can kind of see if something's working before you have it apply to your inventory. So before you actually grant Repriceit access to physically reprice your books in Seller Central, you can set the software up to go through test runs and then check it through your repricing reports to see the different adjustments they would have made but didn't make. The reason that you want to do that is to kind of see before you set it up and before you have all your things go live that it's working, and it's working how you want it to work depending on the parameters that you set up. And I'm going to show you how to do that here in Repricing Settings here in a second. So if you don't want it to actually make the changes yet, and then you want to see the repricing reports, then don't click this active. If you do, and you're already sold on it, and you're just creating a new schedule, or you don't even feel like testing it out, and you just want it to go live immediately, then click it and hit add schedule, okay? So that is how you set up the repricing schedules, just like that, and then you can manage them all here in repricing schedules, okay? The next thing that is most confusing to people is the repricing settings. So if you go into repricing settings, you'll see that I have 2 different repricing settings going live right here. So I can view and edit them from repricing settings right here, but if you want to create a new one, you want to go to the dashboard home. And when you go to your dashboard home, you're going to see one thing here if you just signed up, and it's going to say global. I don't know why they call it global, but that's just the one that they have ready to roll for you. That's like their stock template. So you can either delete that or you can modify that one. But to show you how to set these up, I'm going to create a new template. Now, you want to name your different templates. So maybe if you're shipping stuff into FBA and you're shipping books into FBA, you name it FBA new books. Or maybe if you're doing, coupon arbitrage, you name it FBA coupon arbitrage, right? Or maybe if you're fulfilling it by merchant and you're getting used books, you do FBM used books, right? So this is just so you can understand what you're naming your template, so when you go back into your repricing settings, you can modify or make sure, and also in your repricing reports, make sure that it's actually executing the different things that you want the right way. So I'm just going to name this test template because obviously this isn't real for me, but I just want to show you how to use it. So this is exactly how I used to set mine up. So what I did is I'd come down to merchant fulfilled items only, because like I told you, I like to personally choose what my prices are or match buy box prices manually in my FBA inventory, because I like to control my FBA inventory. I have like 533 or 34 SKUs right now. About 490 of them are all fulfilled by merchant, and only maybe 30 of them or 40 of them are FBA. So it doesn't take too long for me to, basically monitor my FBA prices, because there's only about 30 or 40 of them. But all the merchant fulfilled are manually adjusted through this repricing software. That's like my used books. That's some new books that don't sell very high, and that's some other products that I sell used like new, but I'm not going to get into all that right here. So you can set it up for FBA items only, you can set it up for merchant fulfilled items only, or you can assign specific SKUs to it. So if you really want to get in depth with this, you can assign specific SKUs in your inventory to this. If maybe you're like doing private label and you want to set up different things like that, or if you're doing online arbitrage and you want to set up certain things like that, or you can fulfill it for just like everything. So both merchant fulfilled and FBA. So depending on how you want to go with this route, you can get really creative and you can utilize it that way. I'm going to keep it merchant fulfilled only. You know what? I'm going to do FBA because the majority of you watching this are probably going to be shipping all your stuff into FBA. So I'll keep it that way. Now, the next thing you want to do is list your template criteria. So basically you just want to read these things, right? And you're going to say, okay, a listing date from X days to X days old, and then reprice it. I don't ever play around with this. You can also set certain sales ranges. So like if you only want to reprice items that are under, 100, or only reprice items that are over 100,000 bestseller rank, or only reprice items that are like under 5,000 bestseller rank, that's how you would do that right here, right? Or same thing with price range. Only reprice things from like $9.99 to like $19.99 or whatever, what have you. And this is probably the most important thing. So you can play around with these three things. They're not the most important thing. This is the condition note. But so you can play around with those things, or really get creative with however you want to use the software. This is probably the most important thing right here, the condition, because this is how I use it, right? But depending on how you want to use it and depending on what items you're sourcing, I want different parameters. And you'll see if I go back to my repricing settings right here, I basically have two ways that I do this, right? So that the fulfilled by, I have three ways, right? So I have my FBA inventory that I manually do, which is only ever like 20 to 50 SKUs. Sometimes it can get a little bit higher than that, but I still like to do it manually myself. But what I do is, so when I'm fulfilling by merchant, I either want to match the buy box price with new items, or I want to match the lowest price with used items, okay? But you can also match the lowest price with like anything underused like new. So you want like used good, used acceptable, and used very good. And then you want to set that up because you know going in that you're going to want to match the lowest price. What I like to do is I'll match all the lowest price on all of these unless I'm shipping my used like new into Amazon to try to potentially get the buy box, okay? Or like the other one, right? If you want to set like match the buy box, you need to go understand what your end goal is, what your end goal is in mind ahead of time, right? So if I want to go new and match the buy box, then I'm not going to select any of these other ones. I'm simply going to use new, right? So now we have FBA items, new, add the template, and then update it, right? So then it's going to take us into this template right here, the test template right here, okay? And I'm going to go into, and also before we get into like this setting up of the template right here, if you ever want to, so for me specifically, if I want to make sure, you saw in my repricing schedule that it's set to go off every other hour. So it went off at 1 p.m. It's currently, you can't see because my face is in the way, it's currently 1:32 p.m. right now. So it went off 30 minutes ago and started repricing all my items. All my items should be repriced that are used and new, that are both used and new, right? So my new items are matched the buy box price again, and my used items are matched the lowest price again, unless somebody else's repricing software or manually changed those listings, right? So I could, if I ever wanted to come in and it's like 1:30 and I really want to be competitive, I can always come back to my repricing settings and hit reprice it now like this on my used books, right? Reprice it now, boom. And there, boom. I just initiated another repricing sequence. So not only is it the schedule set up on autopilot, I can also keep my dashboard up and continually reprice whenever I want by simply just hitting reprice it now. Then I can also see what was done in my repricing reports under that actual thing, right? So it'll come up as 1:30 p.m. or 1:33 p.m. Repricing report for FBM used books, blah, blah, blah. It'll show me all the adjustments that it made, okay? So now that we've got that out of the way, what you want to do is you want to come into, we're going to use test template. We're going to set it up. Remember, we're sending our FBA inventory and it's new, right? So we're going to set this up to match the buy box price. Now, if you want to always match the buy box price and then manually adjust yours, you can do that as well. It's up to you. So what I'm going to do is this template order is, it's kind of irrelevant, but basically what you want to do when you set up a template order is if all of these things aren't different, and obviously mine are different, right? So my 2 or my 3 doesn't matter. Usually this is 1 or 2 because one's only strictly new and one's only strictly used. So it doesn't matter what order they go in. They're irrelevant because they're on different items, right? However, if you do have templates that overlap certain items, then that becomes important. So you can set up your template order. That's what it means. So maybe you want this one to go first and then the next one make an adjustment, right? So if this template you want to be your second one after your original adjustment, then you'd make it a 2, right? Boom. And that's how you would do that. So I'm not going to play around with that too much because I like to set mine up different products. But you can if you want to. Like I said, there's so many ways to get creative when you're doing this. Now that I showed you the test template and how to adjust that, what you want to do is you want to come back to the dashboard and you're going to go to your repricing settings finally. And that's how we're going to change certain things. So this is what really confuses a lot of people. And the reason it's confusing is because there's a lot of different things here and a lot of different ways to set up your templates, okay? So if you're ever confused and you get lost, you can always read these little question marks that are going to give you insight on how to set it up or if you want to leave it blank, okay? There's a lot of information in here, and it makes it really simple. Just take a deep breath, take it slow, read your question mark, and it will tell you what to do. So if, like I said, for example, I want to compare my new items only against other new competing offers. If I ship them into FBA, I can have that clicked. If, I want to compare my used items only to against other used items, I can have that clicked. Or I can unclick both of them and just set my template up so my new items compete against both new and used items on that listing, and vice versa, okay? So for me specifically, if I'm shipping something into FBA for this template, so I'm shipping new items into FBA, I'm only really concerned with the new items on that actual listing because chances are a used item is not really going to get the buy box against me too easily. So I'm only, for this specific example, interested in new items. Now, I can also exclude acceptable conditions because acceptable conditions, it's a little bit more difficult to get the buy box, or even higher up on the thing on the actual listing if you go into like other competing offers when you're in an acceptable condition. And you can also exclude just launch sellers if you want, or you can unclick them as well. And like I said, if you need any other information, just read it, right? So check this box if you want to exclude all competing offers in acceptable condition. The default setting is clicked, but you can uncheck it if you want to, obviously. You can also exclude competing offers against like sellers with really bad feedback. So obviously there's a million different things that go into getting the buy box. One is like seller feedback. The other one's like customer service. The other one's like availability to the customer, and then price are probably the two most important. But there are a number of different things. So if you do have bad seller metrics, or if you're a just launch seller and you're fairly new, well, then you really need to compete on price and availability to the customer because you don't have the other metrics to match up against other good sellers, right? So if you have two sellers, one has good feedback and one has good customer service, and the other one has good, slightly bad feedback and bad customer service, and they're both the same price and both in prime and FBA, who do you think is going to win the buy box at the same price? The one with the better metrics, obviously, right? That's just common sense. So you can exclude any of these, or you can include them all and uncheck these. It's really up to you. Now, I always set my minimum to $0.01, and I always set my maximum to 1,000. It's just a personal preference. I never set a default minimum, and I never set a default maximum. Basically, that means if there's no other offers on the listing whatsoever, and if you're doing arbitrage, that's chances are never going to happen. And if you're doing private label, then then that can be useful to you. You can reset a default. Although if you're doing private label, chances are you won't be competing against other people on your listing as well. So I don't really ever set a default minimum. That's just my personal preference. You can if you want to, but I don't And so I always unclick these. And my minimum price is always a cent. My maximum price is always $1,000. It never goes really below, unless you're selling like a really cheap used book. It never really goes below like $5-6, but it really depends on the specific listing. Now, the maximum competing offers, I always set this to the maximum of 10. You can, it's the default 6. You could also, this is for something that's like, if you're selling, the only thing I can think of is like if you're selling used books and you want to compete and save your used book, so you don't want to match the lowest price, right? And you want to keep your price like somewhat in the middle, so eventually it sells for that price and you make a profit. That's the only time I would think that you'd want it a little bit lower. So I always keep it at 10, but that's just my personal preference, okay? Now, reprice new items when there are at least this many new competing offers. I always have these at 1, and same with the used, because if there's even just one other offer that's competing with me a little bit lower, I want to match that. Same thing with used items, same thing with new items. That's just my personal preference. You can have it 2 or you can have it 3, and then just hope that that other one sells out quicker, and then you sell for a higher margin. So like I said, you really need to get in and understand this, so play around with it, but it's not that hard to set up. Once you set it up, you'll see that it works, and then you can kind of, once you get the feel of how it works, you can then go back and tweak certain little things and see how they affect your pricing structure, okay? But that's just my preference. I always go maximum, number of 10, and then I keep these at 1, okay? So I don't keep the default price. If a price goes up, or if price goes down more than a certain percentage, do not reprice it. You can set this to a certain percentage. I don't ever do that. Because I'm really only interested in the repricing, right? I'm not trying to get too creative, because I don't need to get too creative. I really only want to match the buy box with my new items, and and then slightly, if I want to adjust them manually, I can adjust them slightly lower than the buy box, and then knowing that my repricing software is going to either match it at higher or match it lower in the future, I can do that manually along with my repricing software, right? So I don't really ever need to get too intricate, but you can if you want. They afford you all these tools. So don't get confused with all these options. Just know that they're options. You don't need to use them. You can just stick with the basics, match the buy box, and match the lowest price, which is probably what the majority of you want repricing software for anyway, right? So now moving on, so we're down here now. I don't ever, like I said, match if the price goes up. I don't ever match the price goes down. Another question too is, does this actually reprice higher items too? So if you have like the lowest item and then the rest of the competition raises it up, will it match that price? And the answer is yes, it will. So repricing models, reprice my inventory, and this is how you basically want to do this, right? So for these, because these are new items and we're shipping them into FBA, remember, and we want to match and compete against the buy box, we're going to click reprice my items against the buy box owner, right? However, if you were competing against the lowest price, if you were selling like used items, if you were selling like used books, or you just simply wanted to always have the lowest price, then you'd click lowest price. Now you can also reprice your items by condition and the same, only reprice them against items with the same exact condition as you, or better condition. You can also click that. I don't ever use that, and I don't ever use intelligent repricing, although you can try it out if you want to. You can read it, and they basically give you a synopsis of what it is, but I've never used that, to be perfectly honest with you. I only ever match the lowest price, and I only ever compete against the buy box owner, right? So we're going to, remember, these are FBA new, so we're competing against the buy box owner. I don't ever do the reprice sales rank above. I only reprice when an item goes up. I don't ever do that as well, because obviously I want to reprice if the item goes down too. Now, this is something that a lot of people will get worried about. So you never want to compete or never price above Amazon.com if they're on the same listing. I don't ever do that. I don't mind repricing above Amazon.com, but if you're selling like something really competitive, or if it's like an arbitrage product where Amazon has a lot of inventory, then you probably want to click this, because chances are they're not going to sell out of their inventory unless you're checking like a Keepa graph and you see that they've scaled out of their inventory, right? So the only time you'd ever use this is if you're on a listing where Amazon has a decent amount of inventory and you know that chances are your inventory is going to get blocked, because if you have the same buy box price and you have the same lowest price, right, whatever, as Amazon, and they have a lot of inventory, they will share the buy box with you. They actually will, but you probably don't want to ever price it above them, right? Because you always want to match their price. So Then you can also do the percentage amount priced below Amazon if you wanted to do that. So if you always wanted to make sure that you stayed 5% below Amazon, you could do that. If you wanted to make sure that you always stayed 10% below Amazon, you could do that. Although keep in mind that they might have repricing software as well, and that might set off a chain reaction and a race to the bottom, so be very careful with that. I don't ever use it, but you can. The only time I would ever use this is because, like I said, remember, I like to manually do all my arbitrage products in FBA. I only use this for the FBM, like used books, and I only use this for FBM new products that I'm merchant filling myself, okay? So that's what you could use it for. Now, you can also, how much you want to price below or above the competing offer. So the only time you would use repricing software if you didn't want to match the buy box, right? So I use this, like I said, to match the buy box or to match the lowest price. If you wanted to always make sure you were slightly below the buy box to win the buy box on an FBA listing, well, then you're good to go right here because, like we said before, we are competing against the buy box owner right here. So these are the main things that are important, right? Not the other little things. So we could always stay 1 cent below the buy box, right? A fixed price adjustment of 1 cent below the buy box, right? So that's how you could do that. If you always wanted to stay 5 cents below, you could stay 5 cents below. If you always wanted to stay $1 below, you could stay $1 below, and vice versa. If you don't want to ever stay below as you read this, then like you said, the default setting is 0. You can also price above a given target, but by putting a negative amount in this field, or by putting a negative amount in this field. But if you want to match the target offer, then put a 0 in this field because that's going to match it, right? If you wanted to stay below the buy box, then you'd stay below by 1 cent, okay? If you wanted to stay above the buy box, you'd go negative 1 cent, and then you'd always stay 1 cent above the buy box, okay? So that's how that works. You can also always stay 1% below. You can also stay 5% below, and vice versa. Same thing with above. Okay, so now you can compare your FBA items with just both FBA or non-FBA. That's what I always do. I always do both FBA and competing FBA offers because I have seen that you can win the buy box when you're not in FBA, despite what people think. It can be slightly harder, but if your metrics are good, you can also win the buy box as a non-FBA person competing against FBA people with the same price, believe it or not. I see it all the time, and it happens all the time. Or you can compete only against other FBA offers or non-FBA offers if no other offers are found. So that's what I usually like to do. I only compare against non-FBA offers if no other FBA offers are found. That's what I use for the new ones in FBA, but you can also, this one works as well too, or this one works as well too. It's just, like I said, it's all personal preference. Don't get too caught up in the nuances of these things. This is the safest one right here. Don't get too caught up in the nuances of this part, of all the other little things there. The main things that you want to worry about is who you're competing against right here, right, in this section, and what your fixed price adjustment is or what your percentage adjustment is, so you can either stay below or above or match, right? That's all you're really worried about. And then make sure that the other ones just kind of make sense to you. So now the following settings can only be applied to your merchant fulfilled items. So obviously we're in FBA, that doesn't apply to us. And then upload my repricing changes to Amazon once I save this setting. So that's what you want to do when you want it to go live. Same thing with the other scheduled settings, right? So if you don't want it to go live yet, you can simply, and this is if you have an external website or external software that measures this stuff, then you want to click this and it'll send it to your external software as well. So if you want it to go live immediately, click this there. If you don't and you want to test it first, like we talked about before in your reports, then you leave it unclicked and you save your settings, and then you're able to test it in your settings, right? And the way that you can test it, see update successful. So now we go back to our dashboard, and you'll see that, okay, the test template is good to go. Now the way that we could test this, because we didn't click that, right? So when we hit reprice it now, it's not actually going to make the adjustments in Seller Central. It's only going to provide us with the repricing report of what would have happened. So we would hit reprice it now, test it out, see what the repricing report says, see if it made the adjustments that we like, and if it did, then we'd come back into the settings, we'd come down and we'd click this and save the settings, and then every time on the schedule, it would go live in our actual Seller Central and make the adjustments. And every time we hit reprice it now, it would actually make the adjustments, okay? So that's how you do that. and that's how you set up that software. Same thing would apply, just slightly different with FBM. Same thing would apply slightly different with used. Same thing would apply slightly different with matching the lowest price or staying below the lowest price, and vice versa.